Okay, got it. Okay, so this is a special workshop meeting today. So welcome to our special workshop meeting. At a special meeting, no opportunities provided to speak on matters not listed on the agenda today. So with that, we'll call our meeting to order, and we'll have a roll call by our city clerk, Kathy Valdez.
The record should reflect that all members are present.
Okay, with that, if you'll all rise, and we'll have a pledge of allegiance, which will be led by our Deputy Mayor Franklin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so with that, our item this evening is, this afternoon is Inclusionary Housing, and that is going to be a report by our Director of Community Development and Engineering, and that will be John Conley.
1 second, Mayor. Would you like to do the roll call?
Oh, I thought I did that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I went right through the roll call
My bad.
to the Pledge of Allegiance.
I apologize.
I haven't done this in a while, have I? Okay, City Clerk, did I just pass right over you after?
Patrick was misinformed.
I was so excited about the flag getting here that I forgot.
Okay, so are we back to Mr. Conley now? Okay, hey, Mr. Conley.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Am I on here? It's
Yeah,
hard
it's just
to, okay, I
that
got to get up real
sound
close.
system doesn't
Sorry.
work so good in here sometimes.
So welcome to our workshop on inclusionary housing. I'm going to cover the information that was included in the staff report for you briefly with a slideshow here. So inclusionary housing is a program that requires a prescribed percentage or number of affordable housing units within a private housing development. This is basically a program that a number of cities within the county, as well as within the state, employ to increase their numbers of affordable units that are provided through private development. So I'm going to cover today some of the housing, the affordable housing categories that are provided by HCD and HUD, the annual median income requirements that apply for those various categories. I'll talk about Vista's prior inclusionary housing policy that we had for about 30 years in the city here. Some information about what other cities use for inclusionary programs, and then we'll talk about some options that the council may consider in looking at a new policy. So first, affordable housing categories. This is a table that was included in the agenda report that was provided for the meeting today that basically shows what the affordable categories are and how they're calculated. They're all based on an annual median income, which is provided by the state annually or by the region, specifically in San Diego. For 2021, the annual median income is $95,100. And that is the number that they use to determine the various categories. So you'll see on the left, the affordable housing categories include extremely low, which is 30% or less of AMI, very low, which is 31 to 50% of AMI, low, which is 51 to 80%, and moderate, which is 81 to 120%. And those are the various categories that we can provide for affordable housing. And when we provide for affordable housing units, we typically categorize or clarify which types of housing we're providing for in a project using these categories. Above moderate, which is anything that's over 120% of AMI, is considered market rate housing, and that's the majority of housing projects that we see in Vista. I also provided some of the qualifying income information for a family of 3. So the income information that applies to each of these categories varies depending on the family size. And so obviously it goes up in terms of the numbers that's within a family, but the county provides a chart annually that provides these numbers for the various sizes of households. This is for a 3-person household in the table as a sample. I also provided Vista's regional housing needs assessment numbers for each of those categories. So as you all know, on the housing element cycle, which is an 8-year cycle, the city is provided a number from the state of affordable units or total housing units, including the affordable categories that we need to provide for in that cycle. The current cycle for our arena is 2021 to 2029, and we have to provide for a total of 2,561 units within that time period. And each of those categories identifies a number of affordable units that we have to provide for. The city is responsible for providing zoning for those categories, and so we've provided adequate zoning through our latest housing element update. An inclusionary policy would actually generate units, so that would be production. So to cover Vista's prior policy, we had a policy that was adopted in 1985, was ultimately eliminated in 2015. The prior policy provided for 6% of any multifamily housing project reserved as affordable units. Those were projects that qualified for what we call a site development plan, which is 5 or more residential units. It was initially applied citywide, and then later it was tailored down to the multi-residential zone, which is the multifamily zone, and ultimately the mixed-use zone when that was adopted in 2012. The council further adopted a policy in 2006 that better clarified how we applied our inclusionary requirements. Specifically in that policy, it identified that the 6% of the units that were provided with the project had to be provided on site, and any proportionate unit, so a percentage of one unit, could be accommodated with an in lieu fee. So the 2006 policy was how we implemented it up until it was eliminated in 2006 or 2015. But essentially it was provide all the units on site, and if there's any proportionate unit, you're permitted to pay an in lieu fee. The in lieu fee was calculated based on the cost of producing an actual unit at that time. So the rental fee was around $220,000. And the purchase fee was, I think, around $380,000, but they were very high fees because they reflected the actual cost to develop the unit. One more thing to cover was that there was a legal decision in 2009 known as the Palmer case, which was about rent control, but it affected the ability of the city to apply inclusionary requirements to for rent projects. So from 2009 until we eliminated our inclusionary policy in 2015, we did not apply those requirements to for rent. They were only applied to for sale based on that decision. But the state passed legislation in 2017 that changed that. So we can now apply it to either for sale or for rent if we do, in fact, adopt a new policy. There's an exhibit included in the agenda report that includes a pretty hefty comparison of the cities within the region. Of the 19 cities within the region, there are 10 that currently have inclusionary housing programs. They generally range from 10 to 15% of the units in a project as far as various policies go. Some go up to 20%. They're all implemented in an assortment of ways. If the council wants to get into specifics about a city, we can certainly do the research, but the proven fact is that there's a lot of different ways to implement it, and depending on what the city is trying to achieve from a policy perspective, we can tailor an inclusionary program to address those requirements. Numerous cities, most of them require on-site affordable units the way we used to implement our policy, but there are also those that accept fees and other ways of collecting revenue in order to develop them themselves. And then finally, I wanted to talk about some of the considerations that the council might look at in terms of developing a policy. Most cities focus on zones or geographic areas in terms of where these requirements must be met. Typically, it's for multifamily zones or specific types of development projects that are over a certain size. Some apply it to geographic areas like historic downtowns or specific plan areas, depending on the city and what they're trying to achieve. So those are all things that may be considered. They can be applied citywide. They can be applied by zones, or they can be applied by specific geographic areas. Staff also provided some maps of transit-oriented development areas as part of the staff report to show those areas that are within a half mile of a transit center in case you're interested in looking specifically at TODs. Another thing that may be considered are general plan amendments and zone changes. The county is currently undergoing an inclusionary housing study where they're looking at opportunities to apply inclusionary requirements for anything where the zoning or general plan is changed in favor of higher residential density. The idea here is that you may capture some of that value that's being provided to the landowner as part of the upzone in affordable housing. Another consideration is on-site versus off-site units. So as I mentioned, our former policy required that the units be provided on-site. That's the staff preference, if it's possible, so that the units can be provided spread around the city. The council may also consider an off-site allowance where developers can either pay into an off-site fee where the city develops off-site units, or an off-site project is developed by a developer where the city can use those as credits. But there are a number of different ways of looking at it depending on the council's interest. And finally, an in lieu fee may be considered where a developer can pay a fee in lieu of providing a unit. It's typically more difficult to build more affordable units just by using an in lieu fee, because an in lieu fee is typically only a percentage of the cost of building the actual unit, but it can be developed in a number of different ways. Some jurisdictions use it as a full cost. Some jurisdictions use the cost difference between a market rate unit and an inclusionary unit. And so there's a number of different ways of calculating it. The city has an economic consultant that can prepare an analysis for us to look at different ways of calculating it if the council's interested in further evaluating that in lieu option. And I believe that's it for my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions that the council has. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, so I guess that we're going to raise hands. So I'm looking down here. Okay, Councilmember Melendez.
Thank you. Thank you, John Conley, for that presentation. I'm going to have to pull this all the way up. I have a few questions.
Katie, before you go, do you want to do, I have a bunch of speakers. Do you want to do speakers first? Or would you-
That's
what do you
right.
think?
I apologize.
Well,
Yes,
I
let's absolutely hear
apologize. I didn't
speakers
say-
first.
I didn't see them here, and usually but if it's okay, or you can go ahead. Okay, let's do that first, then we'll do the speakers. Okay, we'll start with Kelly Batten, followed by Tony Martinez, followed by Luz Godina.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council members. My name is Kelly Batten, and I'm here on behalf of the Building Industry Association of San Diego. As advocates for home ownership, especially middle-income families, the Building Industry Association of San Diego would like to express our concerns with the reintroduction of an inclusionary housing policy in Vista. As it is in the last 2 years, the city of Vista has only seen 78 new homes built, and adding additional regulations discourages future building. We are in the midst of a housing crisis, and 78 homes in 2 years just isn't enough. Neither is the total of 10,000 new homes that were built in San Diego County last year, which is far short of the 20,000 needed to keep up with job growth and population. We should be asking ourselves, what more can we do to incentivize home building rather than adding additional regulations? In order to encourage affordable units, the state has adopted density bonus laws, allowing home builders to build more homes in a project when affordable units are provided. The higher percentage of affordable units, the more overall units they can build, which helps put families into homes. Anything adopted by the city would have to allow an even higher density than what the state already requires. While there is still and always a need for affordable housing, we are making strides in providing lower cost homes. To continue this trend through the use of state density bonus, we need to continue this trend through the use of state density bonus and encourage the addition of middle income housing, homes that use our essential workforce, including nurses, teachers, and firefighters. We need housing for all San Diegans. We encourage you to not adopt stricter regulations that prevent building of homes for hardworking families. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Tony Martinez, followed by Luz Godina, followed by Jacqueline Zimmer.
Thank you, Mayor Reader. Mayor Reader and City Council members, my name is Tony Martinez. I'm a member of St. Francis Catholic Church in Vista. I'm here representing the 9,000 families registered at St. Francis. I grew up in North County. I went to school to Cal State and then to the University of San Diego. Back in 2008, my family came very close to losing our home. My mother had a very serious work injury to her neck and her shoulders. Without my mom's anticipated total wages, for several months, we couldn't make our full mortgage payments. All the while, I did my best to help my family working full-time and going to school part-time. On top of my schoolwork, I spent many nights filling out paperwork to qualify for federal relief programs for families like mine. At one time, we also received financial assistance from my church to pay a portion of our mortgage. Happily for us, things worked out for the best. And we were able to qualify for partial loan forgiveness for my family's home. Ever since my family came close to losing our home in 2008, I can relate to families at St. Francis, my church, who struggle to pay their mortgage or their rents. There are just not enough affordable housing units options currently available in Vista. Housing is a big issue for families at St. Francis and for our friends and for our community in our neighborhoods in Vista. We all deserve a safe place to live, and that is truly affordable for working families like mine. I know firsthand what this means. We urge the City of Vista to reestablish inclusionary housing requirements for new developments. We also ask that 20% of units developed be affordable. Likewise, let's follow the lead of neighboring cities who have plans for rental homes and or for sale homes to be eligible for inclusionary housing. We saw that in the report by Mr. Conley. Lastly, for developers who do not want to construct affordable units, in-lieu fees should be required for the true cost of building those units. I ask you to remember my story and help us plan for the future for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Luz Cardina, followed by Jacqueline Zimmer, followed by
Hi, my name is Luz Godina. I am a Vista resident and a member of the San Diego Organizing Project and a parishioner at St. Francis Church, also in Vista. I am here representing the 9,000 families registered at St. Francis. My parents bought their first home in Vista in the 70s. And when it came time for me to buy a home, I chose Vista also. But today's housing costs are outrageous, and I would no longer even be able to buy a home in Vista. I know I probably wouldn't even be able to afford the rent. So what I'm asking is that because housing costs have increased so much, it is very important for us to be able to get affordable housing in Vista for my community, in Vista and at St. Francis Church. I believe that having inclusionary housing in Vista can help alleviate our affordable housing issues. Families should be able to live in a home that is affordable and live with dignity. I urge the City of Vista to reestablish the inclusionary housing program. Through this program, I hope we can increase the affordable homes available for rent or sale. And any in lieu of fees collected should be adequate enough to provide those affordable units. Thank you very much.
Jacqueline Zimmer, followed by Lourdes Farhat, followed by Teresa Perez.
My name is Jacqueline Zimmer. My friends call me Jackie. I'm a member of St. Francis Parish, having lived in Vista for 34 years. After retirement as a psychologist, I volunteered for 6 years at the thrift store on East Vista Way run by Catholic Charities. My task was to interview people who came for food. I saw a father with his 3 children sleeping in the car, a mother and daughter, both retired, living in their own cars, and many people living on other people's couches. And I saw people shaking as they told of their rent being suddenly raised hundreds of dollars. To have a place to live is not a luxury. The stability of having a place to sleep and secure your belongings frees a person to contribute to the welfare of society. This idea has been validated in cities where they decided to not follow the accepted practice of telling people with certain problems to fix their problems, and then they would be given housing. Instead, they set them up in housing in a supportive environment as they were. Many of these people improved their behavior. I was a therapist for a local man who had lived on the streets for many years, but at the time I met with him, he was in an apartment. He was so excited. His life was stable, and he told me he would do anything he had to do to keep his apartment. The housing situation in Vista is critical. I have followed Mr. Franklin's efforts to better the situation. Last year, the city had a goal to build up the financial situation of the city, but now the need is to increase the housing availability, especially for low-income people, as defined in RINA, and as we all see with our own eyes. I support that 20% inclusionary number because this is such a desperate situation. In later years, it could be reduced. We look to your leadership to solve this huge problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Lourdes Farhat, followed by Teresa Perez.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lourdes Farhat, and I'm a member of the Social Justice Ministry at St. Francis Catholic Church, working hand in hand with the San Diego Organizing Project. I'm a recently retired registered nurse. I worked for 42 years in the neonatal intensive care unit. I've met so many families in the worst and best times of their life. We get the sickest babies back to health until they're ready to go home. But before doing that, we work hand in hand with the social workers. We want to make sure that that fragile life that we're sending home, that we help throughout months, weeks in the hospital, will go home to a home that is conducive to their health. So I would like you to all imagine a community where families are happy, safe, and secure in their homes. Children live in a safe and clean environment, seniors living with dignity in their golden years. But reality, here we are in the city of Vista. We see homelessness is rising at an alarming rate, and the city of Vista needs to act to abate or solve the problem in our city. Cleaning up encampments and getting rid of trash, putting people up to shelters are good, but we need a long-term solutions by bringing back the inclusionary housing policy. And we ask for your help to those that are opening their hearts to this. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's Teresa Perez.
Hi, City Council members and staff. My name is Teresa Perez. I'm community organizer with San Diego Organizing Project, SDOP, and I'm an organizer in San Francis Catholic Church. I was part of San Francis Catholic Church for so many years. I was volunteer. I started there. So I know the needs of the community, and I know that housing is a big issue. As you noticed, I'm an immigrant. So I remember just in my personal story, when I was a student, working in a restaurant part-time to cover my costs for my school. I studied psychology in San Mark and the University of San Mark. And I remember my struggles to find a place to live. I need to rent a room because I didn't have enough. When I see the income level, definitely I was low or very low income. So I struggled to find a place to live. I was working hard, studying hard. However, I didn't have enough. I tried to find a low-income apartment. However, there were closed lists or waiting lists for so many years. So definitely, in my personal story, I know that we need housing. And a person of faith, and I believe as a person of faith, then everybody will deserve to have a place to live. So I urge you and ask you, please, consider it to bring back the inclusionary housing, 20%, because we need it. It's a lot of the need, and also then can be restated for rent and also for sales. And if the developer they don't want to build and they want to pay the in lieu fee, should be the full cost of building a low income. Thank you for listening to us, and we hope that you can touch your heart and do what is in your heart for the people like me. Then we need it to continue in our lives, to study and to be part of this society. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councilmember Melendez.
Thank you. Thank you to all the speakers who participated today. I wanted to ask a couple questions. So the first one is in regards to how the in lieu fees have been structured in the past, because the information was a little bit confusing in the agenda report. So is it my understanding that the previous in lieu fees were, such a high amount, the cost of a unit, and that incentivized developers to build the units on site. But then at the same time, it's written that the units were required to be built on site. So I'm not sure if it's one and the same, or if it's, there was a specific part of the policy that expressed that they had to be built on site. And in addition to that, the in lieu fees were what they were. So would you know the answer for that one?
Sure. So that you're correct that it's not clear in the report, but we required them on site under the old policy, and we allowed for an in lieu fee payment for only a proportionate unit.
Okay.
So if it was a percentage, a half a unit per se, they could pay the fee. But if it's a full unit, it has to be on site.
Okay. And there wasn't any explicit policy that said they have to be built on site. It was just the high cost of the in lieu fee.
Oh, no, it said that in the policy that we adopted in 2006. It stated they had to be on site if it was a full numeric unit.
See. Okay. And then my other question is, about the percentages. So I know we see a range of, about 10 to 15% for other cities. And based on our RENA numbers, we are allocating 30% affordable units between extremely low and low income. So that's not including moderate income. So we've allocated the space for 33% of the units that we need to produce to be affordable for people at extremely low to low income levels, 33%. And many of the members of the public shared that 20% would be a good place to start, right? That could change over time, of course, which I agree with. But one of my questions is about the state and federal systems of low-income tax credits, because I was speaking with a potential developer for a project here in Vista, and they were offering 6% affordable units for, the development and some of the accommodations and the density bonuses. However, when I asked about, how they are funding those units, they let me know that they were being self-funded. And I asked if they were utilizing low-income tax credits to produce those units. And they let me know that the state requirement is that 20% of the units would have to be affordable in order to access low-income tax credits. So my thought is, if there are funding streams, through the state, through low-income tax credits that, require affordability of 20% in order to utilize them, would it make sense for us to implement a 20% inclusionary housing policy across the board, because that's already lower than the percentage of units that we're allocating, right? 20% versus 33%, extremely low to low income. So I'm not sure if I'm correct about the process to utilize those low income tax credits, but I wouldn't want to, I would want our policy to be contiguous with what the opportunities are at the state level for funding for these units, so it's more sustainable over time. So would you have any feedback or information about those low income tax credits?
So I'm not the expert on low income tax credits, but is Amanda here? Amanda might be able to provide some information on that. Our
That would be
housing,
great.
former
Thank you.
housing director.
It's Amanda Lee, our our assistant city manager, excuse me, in charge of housing.
I'll take any title. I think I'm here. Yes, so tax credits are overly competitive. You have to provide generally 100% affordable to be eligible for tax credits. Those are the ones where every San Diego County is given so much money of tax credits, and normally it's about 1 to 2 projects that qualify per tax credit round. So the rounds come out in January, actually it comes out March and then September. And generally you have to get something called a tiebreaker, and you have to have local money included in it. So we were able to get the tax credits for the CHW project, but we had to provide the land and over $9 million, and then they qualified for tax credits. So doing a set aside of only 20% is not going to make a developer eligible for those tax credits.
Okay, that's very, very helpful. So, and it helps illustrate as well that there is other ways, right, that affordable housing can be produced. But for our purposes today, we're looking at kind of a more widespread policy to support our RENA allocations and our goals for affordable housing. Okay. So that was my question in regards to the low income tax credits. And my only other thought is that in regards to space and location, I am understanding of the function of doing a transit-oriented policy because, we might be concerned about parking restrictions or, people's ease in traveling and commuting. I would be more supportive of a zone-focused program, right? So that those multifamily residential zones, even if they are slightly past that area of transit, they're still they're the more dense areas of our community, and they may be more appropriate for implementing an inclusionary housing policy since, it's not necessarily going to be those single family homes built there, but it's going to be those denser projects anyhow. And as those, opportunities, those development opportunities come to Vista, we know what our RENA allocations are, but without having a structure in some of those denser areas of development, I believe that we'll miss out on the actual production of those units. So although we are allocating 33% of our RENA space to those affordable units, I think 20% is a great place to start, but I want to hear from my colleagues as well. Thanks.
Do I see any other hand? Oh, okay. Who's first? Or should I just come on down the line? Okay, Joe. Okay, Councilmember Green.
I think I raised my
You are next.
check. I think I raised my hand first too. John tried, but I was
You did. I'm
super
sorry.
quick. Here, I'm going to pull this towards me. All right, so I took a lot of notes. Thank you so much for your presentation, Mr. Conley. This is a horrible microphone. I pretty much have to just eat this microphone. Wooka, wooka, woo. All right. Okay, so I definitely appreciate that. Gave me a lot of information. So our 1985 policy, I do feel like was flawed, and I think that's probably why we got rid of it in 2015. I think having an overlay for developments that are as small as 5 units is a little too much personally. I think a 5-unit development can be built by any mom and pop that has an acre, especially with our new small lot requirements. So I think that these affordable overlays and inclusionary overlays need to be targeted towards a developer who's going to be building more than 5 units. And I think that the initial at 5 units was pretty small. So I am more into, if we are going to do, as far as zoning goes, I wouldn't want to go down to a 5 unit at all. I would probably want it to be at like a 20 unit. On like a multifamily, no, smaller than 20 units. And then if it was a single family, I would say no smaller than 10 units. But a couple things I want to stress on this, and I want to ask questions about as well, is I think when it comes to inclusionary housing, we definitely do want to have some type of overlay in different areas and zones of the community. Having to eat this microphone is crazy. I like a transit-oriented overlay 1000% for sure. So number one for inclusionary, I am in support of an inclusionary overlay in our transit-based areas. The way that we're going to get that and that we're going to make developers happy as well is with a density bonus. So if I'm zoned for 40 units per acre, I might up that to 50 units per acre so that I can have a 20% overlay in a transit-oriented area. I think with the density bonus, numbers-wise, it pencils out. And housing-wise, it provides the units. I also like the idea of them being on-site with no in-lieu fees unless it is a partial unit, because, I think that, like you say, we want these affordable units spread throughout our community, and we don't necessarily want to segregate any portion of our community, even if they're, extremely low, moderate, very low income. We should all be able to be together in different parts of the community as far as being built on site. So I'm not a fan of the in-lieu fees. Obviously, if it is an in-lieu fee, I want it to be very high. And those in-lieu fees, a question I had, do those fees go right into our affordable housing account that we can then allocate for more affordable projects?
Yes, that's the intent of those fees.
Okay, so that money goes right back to the city, and we are then commissioned with building additional units or donating to different projects such as the CHW project okay, perfect. So we get that back. I know that our current RENA numbers from 2021 to 2029 look good. Our allocation is good. We don't need to change our general plan. We don't need to change our zoning in order to meet RENA numbers. But it is a lot of zoning. And in order to get the units built, I think that the inclusionary overlay is an absolute way to get them built. I have 3 children right now. They're 23, 21, and 19. All of them make less than 36 grand a year. One of them is married with a kid, and they pay $1,600 per month rent, making $31,000 gross income per year. I take them out to eat a lot, and $1,600 a month for a little 2-bedroom, 1 bath is a bargain in this neck of the woods. And if you look at the the tables right here, that income shouldn't be paying that much money for what's considered an affordable unit. And there is definitely a lack of them within our city. Having 3 kids who've went out looking for properties and knowing a lot of people that are between the ages of like 25 and 35, if you can't spend more than $2,500 a month for your monthly housing expense, you're not going to find anything in the city of Vista. Our city actually led the rental increase in all of San Diego County over the last 12 months. I want to say the number was 27.3% or 22.3%. Don't quote me on that, but you can Google it. But we were the leading city in rental increases. And I think since they've allowed the inclusionary overlay to go towards rental properties, that is a huge benefit to Vistans, because most people who are struggling financially before they make it are renting properties. And I think that's where we need to provide the housing primarily initially, is within the rental properties that the developers are going to be building. So near transit, I'm a huge supporter of 20% overlay for inclusionary housing. The circles that you built, how many miles is that within the transit? Is that 1.5 miles?
It's a half mile.
A half mile. Could we extend that to like 3/4 of a mile?
It's at the county.
I can extend it to what I'd like. So you got to think about what's practical to walk. When we're on vacation, we walk a lot more than we do when we're in our homes and in our cities. But I'll walk for 5 hours on vacation, where I drive my car around when I'm in town, and it only takes 3/4 of a mile. I can walk that in 10 minutes. And if that's what it's going to take to get to a bus or a train or a transit hub, especially whether you like it or not, the Sandag 5 big moves are to put more mobility hubs and more transit in our neck of the woods. So knowing that that's the way the area is going. That's where the tax dollars are going. I feel like we should support housing. Now, what we need to realize is there's not a lot of land, and land is a commodity. So, where these projects are going to be built, we don't really know. We can know the general vicinity, but it's going to be a developer's job to want to build these projects. We are a builder-friendly town. I've never spoken with a developer that says the city of Vista is hard to deal with. Luckily, we have the best director of planning in the county of San Diego. But I think putting an overlay like this just shows that we care about our community. I was raised on $1,000 per month with food stamps and powdered milk and government cheese. Everybody's heard the story. And, without programs like this, and there weren't a lot of programs like this, I might not have ate some meals. And I wish that there was some more affordable housing when I was a kid, and seeing my kids struggle like this makes me know that we haven't made as big of a dent in it as we'd like. This isn't the solution for homelessness, and we're not going to solve homelessness by an inclusionary overlay. But what we can do is provide an avenue for housing for people who didn't have that avenue before. And it's a lot easier for a developer. You might think $300,000 is a lot of money, but if they're making $20 million, a $300,000 check's no big deal. And I would prefer that we work to get all those units built so that we don't just have them zoned, but we have them built. So what I'm supportive of is something near the transit. I think a 3/4 of a mile radius near transit is good. From a mandatory overlay city-wise, I would want to have a unit specification. So for rental properties, as far as apartments and medium high density units, I think 20 units or more should have an overlay citywide. I would set that overlay at 7 to 8%. I will talk to my colleagues about what they think that should be. But since we're going to go with such a high percentage in our transit-oriented areas, I think the developers kind of more in the hills should get a little more of a break, because we're going to have parking for these units. In the transit-oriented areas, if we're going to do density bonuses, I want to lower the parking requirements, because we're going to be screening these candidates. There's going to be a lot of candidates for these units. As we saw thousands of applications, I want to say, 2,000, I think is what they actually told me, for the VA Artist Village down there. And we only have 59 units total. Thousands of applications for 59 units. So if we do a 20% overlay in transit, we're going to be able to fill those up no problem. Those same people are going to be coming to our downtown, spending their money in our city. If you want to do any specific overlays, the only specific plan that I like with an actual inclusionary overlay would be in my downtown specific plan to be an inclusionary overlay. But I think that's also going to be covered because of the transit proximity in my circle. So I don't think I need to do a 20% overlay over there. So I'm really more geared towards transit. That's where my heart is at. That's where I think that the county is going towards. I think our young families that need affordable housing are going to be gearing towards transit. People might not know this, but I'm sure Karina's been telling everybody about it. If you're under the age of 18, transit's becoming free in San Diego County. So we want to be near transit stations for our kids. They can jump on a bus or a train and go to the beach for free and come back for free. So I really think this is the direction that the county's going. And I think from a city standpoint, it's responsible of us to provide housing for our residents near this mass transit. So that's what I'm super supportive of. I would have to have a real swaying to put a mandatory overlay of a large percentage on the units. But if we're going to be giving a density bonus in order to compensate for the additional overlay, and I'm not opposed to that anywhere, any type of development, if you're going to be giving us affordable housing and you're going to be giving us something for our community, we'll give you a density bonus. But we're not just going to give you a density bonus for so you can make more money. We want to give developers density bonuses so it can benefit the community, and it should work out numbers wise for everybody. It's not an additional overlay, not an additional restriction. It's just an additional benefit for our community. So that's my feeling on inclusionary housing. I've talked to a lot of people about it. Actually spoke with my son about it, who's 15 years old, on the way to school this morning. And even he said, yeah, Dad, we gotta, we should have housing for everybody. And if people are making money building a bunch of houses, there should be room for everybody to make it and at least get them started with paying a particular monthly rent and moving on up. So that's where my heart's at with this inclusionary housing. I think that it's, going in the right direction. I do think 5 units is way too small, but that's where I am at this point. And let me just make sure 20% access LITCs in lieu fees. Staff likes on site. I like on site. That's it. Mr. Franklin.
You can't call on him. It's my turn. plus Karina raised her hand, but I raised my hand too, and I have a question. Could you, I, if we have density bonus already, so then why do we need inclusionary housing? If we have the density bonus that the state just put in place, then, and this, just so you know, this is like my 9th meeting on inclusionary housing. It was in, it was out, it was in, it was out, and then we increased it and we took it away. And so, I've been through this a lot. And there's a lot of different reasons for it, and there's a lot of reasons against it. So, and this microphone is driving me crazy. I know. So anyway, could you tell me, if we have the density bonus that the state put in, then why would we need inclusionary housing? What would the advantage be to have
So,
that?
excellent question, Mayor. Density bonus is an option for a developer if they want to include affordable units in their project. They can they get a density bonus by providing those units in the project. So it's an option for them to get it if they provide the units. An inclusionary requirement is automatic. You must provide the units as part of any development based on the policy set by the council. So one is an option to get increased density. The other is a requirement to provide affordable housing.
Oh,
So you may get
okay.
a density bonus by providing those affordable units because you can qualify, but it's a city's automatic requirement. That's the difference.
Got it. Okay. Okay. So who's first? Okay. Councilmember Contreras.
I want to thank my coworkers on staff for the presentation, putting together all the information for us to have a dynamic conversation about housing. When we look at the broader market, there's reports coming out indicating that we are possibly since 2020 in an era of irrational exuberance in the market. People's wages are not high enough to compete with the astronomical increase in housing, whether that be in the rental market or for purchase. Since we've diverged so much from market fundamentals when it comes to just letting housing be built, there's absolutely no way that we're going to establish a level playing field for individuals who aren't able to come in with $100,000 over the asking price of a house, or can't afford the 23% increase that we had in 1 year. And looking at 2015 wasn't too long ago, but since 2015 to now, we've had an incredible amount of units built here in the city of Vista. So people who are looking at affordable housing as a crisis knew that we were going to have an extraordinary increase in rents here in the city. And now we know with the data that that is in fact true. So we can't just leave it up to the market to build housing for all. I think it's really important that if we do want to have housing for all, including workforce housing, that we create a system or we utilize the tools that are already created to build an environment where community well-being means that you have an affordable place to live, because that is the most crucial cornerstone of community well-being, is that you don't have to live in anxiety that you're going to lose the one place that you have for safety. So, I think we've had, I'm really proud that this council has moved towards a direction of understanding the gravity, the crisis that we are in. It's an affordability crisis, and we can't blame anybody else except for ourselves. So this is a point of accountability for this body to say, okay, we have the tools to implement the actual production of units. Because for too long, we have been saying that we're providing the zoning with our RENA numbers, but that does not produce the housing. With inclusionary housing, we'll have the ability to generate the units necessary. So there's a lot of things that both Councilmember Melendez and Councilmember Green brought up that I am in support. One of the big things is on-site. We definitely want to promote integration in our community. And where there is the ability to build an inclusionary housing development, we will see community flourish. We will see individuals that are from different generations living together. You know, I think that Councilmember Green brought up a extremely important part of the equation, which is we are gearing as a state towards adopting better mass transit systems, because there's no way that we're going to be able to have a privatized transportation system that everybody can access to go to the places that they need to go. And there's already an incredible momentum behind trying to connect all of us here in San Diego County to one another and to the places that we need to be. Inclusionary housing that provides 20% in a transit development area, that is where we need to be as a city. You know, we're only 19 square miles. So essentially, you know, when we're looking at our transit corridors, where a lot of the market rate apartments have been built are in transit areas. However, because we don't have a policy in place, we haven't captured any affordable units. No affordable units were generated, you know, with Persea, which is 305 units. Can you imagine if we would have had a policy in place? The same thing with the Ryland downtown, right? So this is an important conversation, and I want to make sure that we provide staff the information necessary so that we can adopt an ordinance that Vistans are going to be supportive of, and that's really going to actually make a difference in generating these units. Now, let me take a look at... Now, I can see also where Councilmember Green is coming from as far as, hey, you know what, 5 units, maybe that's too small. Most of the developments, I think, that are going to make a huge impact in the city of Vista, that would be more affordable for more people, are going to be larger projects. So I think, you know, extending the transit area to 3/4 of a mile, I would be supportive of even a mile. Definitely that being a maximum if we're specifically looking at transit, but I think 3/4 of a mile to a mile, I'm supportive of that. I also like the idea of not having an in lieu fee that is more of an incentive to not build. So I can definitely see myself going in the direction of being supportive of no in lieu fees unless they are high enough to offset the cost of actually building and generating that unit. Let's see. And I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything. Yeah, multifamily zoning, supportive of that. I do think, though, that it makes sense to have overall framework for the city of Vista, where we do take zoning into consideration and we have a minimum unit. That's kind of where I would want to start. And I just want to say one thing about density bonus. I mean, we if it worked to generate units, we would have those units right now. So, the inclusionary housing, it's really important. We had an experiment here in Vista where we got rid of it for a little bit, and we're seeing that the chickens have come to roost, and it's not a good situation. So that's all I have to say for right now. I will look forward to hearing from my colleagues.
Deputy Mayor Franklin.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Conley, how many of the 2,561 units that we've zoned for do we know exist in Vista?
For the current RENA cycle we're in, last year we built around 540 units. And I don't think any of those were affordable, or it was a very small number. So most of the current cycle we're in has been market rate.
Does the city of Vista know what the total number of income restricted units that exist in the city is?
Yes, we report that to HCD annually. I don't have it with me today, but we do keep track of that on an annual basis.
Is it less than 2,561 that we're required to have allowed zoning
Yes.
for? Would you say it's substantially less?
Yes.
So here's the point I want to make about inclusionary housing. Median is a mathematical term that means half or more and half or less. If you took everyone's income, you wrote them down on a piece of paper, and you divided the number equally in half. So there's 98,500 people live in this city. That means that 59,100 of them are in the bottom 60% of any mathematical rendering that divides them. Meaning that you've got 59,100 people who would qualify for the, to live in a moderate, between moderate and extremely low housing. Here's the difficulty that I face. The waiting list is thousands. And when you look at your children and they want to know why housing is not affordable, what is the realistic likelihood that they are going to be able to access? If we had actually built 2,561 units, then that would mean that if everybody only lived in one of them, which we know is not true, but that would mean that only 4.3% of those who are eligible would benefit. Who's going to pay? Because it's not going to be the developers. The developers don't pay, builders don't pay these fees. They don't pay for these mandates. They're not going to reduce their margins. Money is like water, it finds its level. If you're an investor, you could invest in pharmaceuticals, you could invest in banking, you could invest in the defense industry, you could invest in any number of things. And one of the things you analyze when you invest is what's the rate of return. In the home building marketplace, 8% is the number. Isn't that about right? 8%. Every builder pegs that number. They're going to add on 8% for profit on top of whatever costs we impose upon them. They're not going to change that, because if the rate of return becomes significantly different, number one, they're not going to be a competitive investment for the people who are investing to build those homes in the building industry. If the industry as a whole had a reduction, then money would start to look elsewhere to invest. And that would mean that there'd be even fewer dollars available. That's not the real problem here. The real problem here is the cost of this mandate is going to be passed to your children, to your brothers, your sisters, to all of the parishioners at St. Francis who are now struggling to afford, because if there's 4.3% that have access, and even if we could triple it, which is not going to happen because we're not building units that fast, you still would only have 12% that would have access. So who pays for the mandate? Is it going to be a billionaire somewhere? No, it's not. It's not. It's truly not. It's going to increase if there's 60 homes built. It's going to increase the remaining that are not subject to this, because those homes will have to pay more so that the margins and costs are still in line. That means that the other individuals who qualify for subsidized housing, because they represent 60% of the population of our city. And who are the residents of multifamily housing? Is it the wealthiest citizens, or do they tend to more live in single family residence? So you have those who are already most economically disadvantaged who live in multifamily housing, and you're going to impose additional costs on those individuals to pay for a very small mathematical subset who, frankly, are very fortunate. They wait on a list for many years, and then they finally get one of these slots. But who's paying to advantage that individual? Who's paying for the benefit that they're receiving? It's not the taxpayers at large. Now, when we talk about a tax credit system, that's a progressive way to pay for it. Why is it progressive? Because the people who pay the most amount of money in taxes also happen to be the people who earn the most. When the government, the federal government, issues a tax credit, or even the state government issued a tax credit, when you deprive the state or the federal government of $1, that means that it has to be replaced somewhere. The state and the federal government both have progressive income tax systems. That means that those who earn the most pay the most, and they pay substantially more than those who earn the least as a percentage of their incomes. That's what we call a progressive tax. We have a progressive income tax system in our country. When you devise a system that lays a cost or a tax, a housing tax, which is what this is, onto the neighbors in lower income housing, and not just, I'm saying income that's in the bottom median, okay, the bottom half of housing cost, which is everybody that qualifies here, those people who are in the bottom half of income earners are going to pay 100% of the cost of this. That's the truth. That's mathematical fact. That's a mathematical fact. And those people would qualify if they could wait years and years to get onto this list. They would qualify for the benefit, but now they're going to have to pay for the inclusionary housing units that exist in their development down the hall from them. Where's the fairness in that? That's a regressive tax. It's one that lays costs on those who earn the least heavier than it does on those who earn the most. Now, I do not believe in regressive taxes, okay? Regressive taxes hurt lower income families the worst. And I do not believe that we should be in the business of laying regressive taxes because they hurt working families. Now, there's at least a third method that I'm familiar with. Actually, there's at least two more to provide low-income housing. As far as providing subsidized or income restricted, there are bond-funded projects, which I'm currently working with Mr. Conley on a project that seeks to create as many as 400 new workforce housing units. That would be, a percentage of them would be income limited. They would all be subject to maximum rent increase, so a rent cap. But a system where private investors purchase bonds and pay for the cost and are repaid with the rents over a 30-year period of time, that's a much closer to a free market solution. There is some tax, there's still some progressive taxation going on there because they're tax-free municipal bonds. And so the government is foregoing the tax on those earnings. But again, it's a progressive tax. So we can have a conversation about providing for subsidized units. But, and by the way, the other one is, we have a hotel and I'm engaged on Nextdoor right now in a conversation with a lot of people who are way unhappier than I thought they would be. I've been talking to John and Patrick about the Motel 6, which is currently being converted a completely market rate project, no rent restriction. But those units are going to be available to those who are lower income earners because they're smaller units. They're doing a beautiful job remodeling right now. I've actually received a lot of compliments from the neighbors who see the work that they're doing. So market rate is another way that we can encourage housing that is available to those who are earning less than the median. But this is what I'm going to honestly ask you is, do you want to impose, if we're only, even if we had provided the 2,561, which we're nowhere near, we concede. Even if we provided 2,561 units, that means that we only provided 4.3 of the 59,000 who are the roughly 60% of bottom income earners. This means that of those 59,000 people who are in the lower 60%, that means that 95% of them, 95.7, are going to pay the cost for this tax that we're about to impose. And how do you look at the people who earn the least in the community and say, we're going to lay a tax on the housing that you're trying to afford. We're going to make it more expensive for you to afford, but there's going to be this great benefit, which is that, 1 in 20 of you are going to mathematically qualify for this. So it becomes kind of like a lottery system. That's really what it is. So it's like if we all went out and bought a lottery ticket, there were 20 of us, because mathematically that's about right, maybe 21 or 22. And one of us is going to win this lottery and going to get a benefit of a lower cost unit. But the rest of us who are all in the lower income tiers are going to have to pay the cost of the lottery ticket. We're each going to spend $100 on the lottery ticket. One person only can win out of the 22. How does that make any sense? To make your child, who's not going to get at the top of the list, or your brother, your sister, your father, your uncle, who's a lower income earner, to lay this additional cost on them when we have other good avenues to incentivize. Now, we talk about density bonus. This is perhaps where we could find some compromise, because the density bonus system is one that does not create a mandate. It allows developers to make a choice, and essentially it becomes a free market incentive. If they choose to build the affordable units, then they get a reward, and that's how the state law works right now. So if we wanted to talk about having a density overlay, but to lay 8% over the entire city and to say that every low income earner in the city is going to have to pay the cost of this, it just strikes me as so fundamentally unfair to working families. If I've got the math wrong, please somebody correct me. But it's pretty straightforward. Yeah, let's hear it.
Not yet. I'm gonna talk first for a second, because I am speaking into it, but it isn't speaking out there. I just wanted to say that because I've been through this so many times, and one of the things about Vista is we've always had more affordable housing than other cities around us. That was one thing that always came up, because look at the price of housing in Carlsbad. Look at the price of housing in San Marcos. We've always had more affordable housing in Vista than other people. And one reason we dropped the incentive was because the building stopped when we had the inclusionary housing. Then we didn't have much building. Building slowed down for a long time, and people sat on their projects for a long time. And then when we dropped it, pretty soon it got better. And so they've built a lot. Now I realize that Ryland and Presea didn't have affordable housing in it, but we've built for housing. We built affordable housing downtown on Santa Fe across from the Transit Center. We built the one that's down a little ways that's across from Pepper Tree Frosty. We just built the one on that's just opening now. That's the Community Housing Works. We built the senior center on Civic Center. That money came from a lot of the help and stuff that we had. Some of it came from our money that came from inclusionary housing. You know, the people that put money into that. So it hasn't been. It hasn't been a bad thing. We have a lot, and plus we have more affordable housing invested than other cities. If you look at the cities like National City and the ones that have more affordable housing, they don't have an inclusionary housing. If you look at I looked at the chart down here with all the different cities that didn't have it, and some of the ones that have more affordable housing didn't have inclusionary housing. So I don't know. That was just my 2 cents. And then the other thing is, if they're building apartments or for sales, whoever gets the other apartments, the ones that are affordable, it's wonderful for them. But the other people the money's going to go on those, and those are more expensive. Those are going to be more expensive. So the rent on those are going to be more expensive, or the for sale is going to be more expensive. I mean, that's got to come from somewhere. That money, if you want to give somebody something cheaper, it's got to come from somewhere. That money's got to come from somewhere. So that's why I've been against inclusionary housing all this time. I'm listening, but I'm not convinced yet that that's the right way to go. The density bonus is a choice, and I don't know that we can't we give density bonus without making them do other things. I don't know. Can we offer that and so that would be a question I would want to know. So anyway, I'll go. Who is first down there? I see all of you. I think Joe is first. Oh, council member. Well, you all raised your hand, so I'll go down the line. Green.
I get. Thank you, ma'am. So I just wanted to clarify my inclusionary overlay and kind of explain the density bonus program, because I feel like my math and your math is a little bit different. So what I'm thinking is that if I'm going to force a 20% inclusionary overlay in my transit area and it's zoned for 40 units, which means I got to give an extra 8 units, that I might upzone that to 50 units. Therefore, I have 10 affordable units and 40 market rate units. And the builder does have to build the extra 10 units, but they also now have a 50 unit complex, and they're receiving 30% or 60% of the revenue on those 10 units they would have never built before. And I would assume that as a council and as a staff, we could come up with additional ways to incentivize a builder. The other thing with the citywide mandate is that if there's going to be an 8% inclusionary overlay, again, instead of a 20 unit, it's a 22 unit, okay? If you don't want to do any inclusionary housing, build a 19 unit complex, okay? What's the difference? So I think math-wise, it's not like that. And I do have 4 kids. I know Judy's got kids. I don't know who else has kids up here, but I'll tell you what, man, from a kid perspective, if I could say, hey, out of every 20 units, I'm going to give 2 houses that you and your friends can afford. Out of every 50 units, I'm going to give 10 houses that you and your friends can afford. The market is going to dictate rent. I do want to say that I do not blame myself for the housing crisis. I don't blame this body for the housing crisis. I blame inflation. I blame minimum wage used to be $4.25 an hour, and it's $17 an hour right now. I couldn't raise a family on $1,000 a month like my mom did. So, the cost of living increases and the cost of rent increases. Our area here in San Diego, and specifically Vista, has increased so much because we were undiscovered for years. The proximity to the ocean of our city is amazing. If you look at housing trends from 30 years ago, our boom is identical to Newport Beach's boom 30 years ago. Now, when I started selling houses in the mid 90s, I could sell houses for under 200 grand. And if you wanted to spend 400,000 or 500,000, you could move to Newport Beach. Well, once that turned to millions, everybody's like, I don't want to spend $1 million in Newport Beach. We're going to stay in North County. Well, now every property in Vista that's a detached house is at $1 million. I don't see that changing with the cost of living increases and things, and I don't see that going down even if we build more inclusionary housing. But what we can do is lock in a percentage of our housing stock for our community most in need, and we can do it with our builders working with us to make sure that they're not put off financially. So with this density bonus, when we're building rental properties, that's great because the people who hold that asset get 60 or between 30 and 60% more income than they ever would have got, because they built 10 extra units because of our density bonus, which makes their property and their gross scheduled income and their return on investment higher, which it's not a math, it's not magic, it's a math thing. So when we do the numbers on the rentals, that's the case. Developers want to be community friendly and they want to stay in communities because they want to keep building and making money. So these builders that I've spoke with that are building houses, they want to have down payment assistance programs. They want to have inclusionary overlays so that the guy who doesn't have $100,000 can come in and buy a house. We actually have a developer working with us right now that's actually planning on giving a 20% down payment bonus to a certain percentage, I think it was a 10% overlay on his development over there to Vista residents that work in Vista and live in Vista. You get a 20% down payment, silent second that's forgiven after a certain amount of time that you've lived in the house. So if we can come up with innovative programs that say, hey, for our purchase housing stock, we want to have an inclusionary program where a developer helps with the down payment assistance so that a home is attainable for a moderate income. I'm all for that. I think any development that you're going to build more than 10 houses should have a down payment assistance program. If you build 10 houses, make it 11 and make that one, or 1.5 and give me in lieu fee, make that one be a down payment assistance program. Saving that money to get your mortgage insurance down on a home purchase is so hard. And unless you've served our country, which thank you, anybody who has served our country, you have high mortgage insurance if you can't come up with 5, 10, 20% down. And we just said houses are $1 million. So 20% of $1 million is $200,000. And if we actually have developers that are willing to come in our town, build in our town, we give them a density bonus. Maybe we make the lot sizes a little smaller, so they can fit the more units in there, but to give back to our community and give that housing stock. We'll be known as the council that is friendly to developers and friendly to our community. And numbers wise, it works out just fine and nobody is losing. And we're building these assets and we're building this community. Like, I moved here from Illinois, and when it comes to diversity and inclusion and, the type of people that live in my hometown where my family's from and the type of people that live in the city of Vista, it's like day and night. I moved out here. I learned a new language. I learned, different types of foods, different types of musics. I mean, being a part of this community has really made me who I am. And I couldn't afford to live here today, just like a lot of you, if I was to move from Illinois. So I think having this inclusionary housing allows people to have the experience we used to get, because you used to not have to go to college and you could go make money and build a business and stuff. We live in a day and age now where you go to college, you get a grant, you get a job, got to have a bachelor to get a job. Like, where we were from the 80s and where we are right now is totally different. And I really think that if we can make it work out financially, which that's the big holdup, is the fiscal responsibility of an elected official, to not burden developers, to not burden builders, while also helping my community. And how do I do that? Through this amazing program that the state has given us. So I feel like the math is a little skewed. My daughters aren't going to pay for it. They might only be one of 20 people that get it. But if we don't do this, 0 out of 20 people get it. So I want to say, hey, 5 out of 100, 10 out of 100, 20 out of 100, yes, 80% of people are going to be paying more, but they're going to either be able to afford it or they're going to be able to budget for it. There's obviously not enough affordable housing for everybody, but right now there's not enough. Another thing I want to do is agree with you, Judy. Vista has always led North County in affordable housing. We've built more than our fair share. We got more than San Marcos. I mean, Escondido's coming up on us, but that whole Paseo Santa Fe corridor, you don't know how much I took about why aren't there any market rate properties on Paseo Santa Fe? I'm sure you guys heard it as well. Right across from Pepper Tree, it would have been a great spot, but that's 100% affordable. We do have a lot of 100% affordables, but this inclusionary overlay is going to be a mix of both of that. And if it's a 80-20 or a 90-10 in these particular areas, I agree with it. And I think if your only holdup is the financial aspect, we have a mechanism to offset the finances. So that's what I wanted to do, was talk the math.
But you keep talking about the density bonus. They have that anyway. They have it anyway.
It's a forced density bonus. So this is what I'm saying. They can do it. You're saying, no, it's the same density bonus, but right now, the developers have the option of saying, hey, I'm going to build 50 units and I'm going to make 10 of them affordable because I feel good about that. What I'm saying is, I don't care if you feel good about it. If you're going to build 40 units, you're going to build 50, and I'm going to make you use the density bonus to build 50 units. I don't care how a developer feels going in. I want them to know, if you come into my city, that we're going to have you do the density bonus to provide inclusionary housing. I'm not going to take 8 units out of their 40 units the way it's zoned. I'm willing to change the zoning. And this is me personally. We can speak for other council members, but I want to be outside the box thinking. And if I have to change zoning and do a density bonus because I'm going to force inclusionary housing, it's a forced density bonus. It's not a chosen density bonus. So yes, developers can choose it, but I want to force it. And since I'm forcing it, I'm not passing the cost on to them, and I'm not passing the cost on to my residents. I figured out the mathematics to make it work for everybody.
Councilmember Contreras.
I want to thank Councilmember Green for breaking down the mathematics. It's really good to have that in the public record, so I really appreciate that. And, you know, also looking at, just going off from where Councilmember Green left off, you know, he did bring up reducing parking. You know, that's another issue that developers have when they're looking at how this project is going to pencil out or not. And, you know, I'm not here to fight for an endorsement for the building industries. I'm not here to protect them. I think that those who produce housing is a human right, and there needs to be access to shelter for individuals. And just because we have inclusionary housing does not mean that it's not profitable. So, you know, it just simply means that we, instead of building 0 units, we have a mechanism where units will be generated whenever you see, right, something going on over here, some new building, right, a new apartment complex or condos or whatever the case might be. You, as a resident of Vista, can say, hey, I might have a spot there. Or my kids might have a spot there, or my grandchildren might have a spot there, or my best friend might have a spot there, right? So, you know, we have so many different things that are anxieties in our society after everything that we've been through collectively and that we continue to face collectively. I think it is the responsibility, especially of your local government, because we can sit up here and we can tell you how, you know, we don't agree with the state this and mandates that and all this stuff. But we have the ability right now, right here, as a local municipal government body, to provide direction to staff to say, we know we're in a housing crisis. We know that the tools that are available that are optional for developers at this time are not generating the number of units that we need that are affordable. And I think it was really important what Deputy Mayor Franklin pointed out, saying, you know, even if we were to build all these units, there's so many people that would qualify for them. You know, I wouldn't go down the same route that he went, but I would stop right there and say, yeah, that's illustrative of the situation that we have here in Vista, here in San Diego County, that there is not a situation where someone making $25,000 who, you know, someone working full time, where they can have dignity and relieve themselves from the anxiety of possibly not having housing in the future, because even if they have housing right now, they're scared that their rents are going to increase. So, you know, I just think that if it makes sense for our residents, we have a responsibility, 1, to hear, 2, to be creative and flexible, because there is a way for us to move forward where a developer can still come to the city of Vista and say, hey, you know what? I'm just going to have to build a bigger project, but I'm going to be able to deliver affordable housing. And that integrated housing is extremely important. When we, really start to look at the issue of whether something is fair or not, I think it's not an appropriate way to contextualize the situation, because then we're starting to really look at class divides. And if we want to go in that route, I feel like that's a conversation for a different time. It is fair to provide an entry into housing, and it is absolutely necessary to do that. I also do not agree with the logic proposed saying that inclusionary housing is a regressive tax. I believe there's a lot of logical fallacies in that. So, I can't walk out of this room and look at people and say, hey, you know what we have done and what's available to developers right now, it's going to be okay because the housing that you need now is going to be built. So we're not going to do anything about it. I just don't think that that's okay. We have the opportunity to right what I do believe is a wrong from 2015. And like I said, that situation, the chickens have come to roost, and we really need to create the mechanism and implement the tools necessary so that people can enter into housing, so that people can live closer to where they work. Right? This is all about empowering the individual to have more buying power. If an individual is working 40 hours a week at minimum wage, they're working really hard. And if they are able to access an affordable unit, that just increases the buying power of that individual. And that's a really important part of market fundamentals. When you have individuals that have an increased buying power, we're going to see more economic activity and prosperity generated in our community. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Councilmember Melendez.
Thank you. I disagree with the assertion that market rate renters are going to absorb the cost of affordable units. I don't agree with that. I don't see evidence of that being displayed by our city staff or a reputable source. And in fact, in my volunteerism with the San Diego Housing Federation, my understanding is that although there is a small decrease to the profit margin of a developer who builds affordable units, that the market is also a reflection of our political reality. When 10 out of 19 of our local jurisdictions have inclusionary housing requirements, that changes the market. And developers are going to continue to be friendly to developing in our city and building in our city, even if there are some restrictions. And I'll tell you that luxury market rate housing doesn't need a mandate in order to be unaffordable. I do not want to see in my community, where I grew up here and I have family here and I want to grow in community here, I do not want to continue to see market rate luxury housing developments encroaching in on our community and showing us that we don't belong here. If you can't afford it, then you can just leave. When we actually have the legal capacity to create boundaries with our developers so that our housing market can reflect the true needs of the residents here. So I think that there's some, ideologies that we have differences about as a council. However, there is a clear legal precedent for us utilizing an inclusionary housing program to produce the affordable housing that we have allocated according to our RENA requirements, which the RENA requirements are just the bare minimum that the state of California is requiring us to document. Just to document and say, hey, we've zoned and allocated enough space for this. It's the bare minimum of what we have to document. It's not a real reflection of how many affordable units we need in our community. We actually need a lot more. And although we have built affordable housing in our community, it's also about continued growth and smart growth. We know there's going to be future developments down the line. If I'm looking at District 3, my city council district, I want to see developments that are desegregated, that are integrated, where people of a variety of income levels are able to access housing. And because it is our obligation to the state of California to provide proof that we can accommodate those affordable units, and I believe it's our moral obligation as elected officials to lead and implement our RENA requirements in an equitable way, that inclusionary housing policy is a very clear, precedented way for us to do that. So for me, I don't think that there's much more discussion that I would like to have about the value of an inclusionary housing program, because outside of lack of concrete evidence and fear mongering, I'm not hearing a concrete argument for why we shouldn't have inclusionary housing program. My other concern is that if we were to do a program that prioritized the density bonus, how would that cause us to miss out on potential affordable units down the line? So I think a great way to start, since I see there is a consensus forming around, I would be very amicable to a widespread policy of 8% throughout the city of Vista. That means, like Councilmember Green mentioned, if a 20 unit development is proposed in a certain area, then we know that we'll be able to secure at least some of those units as affordable. So I think that that's a great way to start. And even if we didn't require a density bonus for those transit-oriented areas, just starting with an 8% inclusionary housing requirement, which again, our RENA numbers reflect that we need 33% affordable units in our community. 33 of what we're supposed to build or whatever is supposed to be affordable for low to very low income. So I think it's very, very meager requirement to require 8% of the units to be affordable. And there's a variety of affordability levels, right? I think anywhere from low to very low income, according to our AMIs, would be appropriate. I think that we have, more opportunities to build more affordable housing through other structures that we've discussed in this meeting so far that would allow us to build those 80% AMI units and that sort of thing. So I'm not, maybe this could be explained to me a little bit more. I'm not quite understanding the value of utilizing a density bonus as a forced measure versus inclusionary as a forced measure, because I'm not anti-density. I think we should grow where it's appropriate. And I think that we should grow in an integrated way. So I'm not against density bonuses. I'm very much for an integrated inclusionary housing program. But I just think to keep it simple and to appeal to the will of our community, I would like to make a motion that the city of Vista develops an inclusionary housing program widespread throughout the city of Vista at 8% of the units being affordable, and to just start there. So that's all I have to say. What was that?
So who is next?
Oh, well,
Oh, you're not done.
I appreciate the clarification because of your comments previously, I do think that having a standard for how many units would be appropriate. So I would like to confirm my motion is for developments over 20 units, that 8% of those units have to be affordable. Thank you.
I second.
Okay, Deputy Mayor, are you next, or was?
Yeah, look, I just wanted to say, we do have differences of opinion. Everything that is built and enjoyed by any person is paid for by someone somehow. We can have honest disagreements about who pays for it. But let's not use ad hominem attacks and use words like accusing our fellow colleagues of, quote, fear mongering. Let's make sure that we can have a productive civil discourse here and that we can get along and do the people's business in a friendly way. Thanks.
Councilmember Green?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Sorry, I have to eat. I have to eat this again. I was hoping that my colleagues, although the motion was moved and seconded, Mr. Chung, do we need to vote on this before I offer an amendment to her motion or a substitute motion since the existing motion was seconded? I would like to offer to see if we can get a second on an amended motion. Okay, so I spent some time writing all this stuff down right here, so I'm gonna try to work out a motion that I think we can all amicably work on together. So I am fine on an 8% overlay citywide on all multi-unit developments over 20 units. If all units in these areas will be given a density bonus of at least 8%, but up to 20% if 20% affordable are added. So what I'm getting at is I just, the argument of our colleagues has to do with the, and of developers as well, with the cost. So what I'm saying is, so the 8% overlay, I would like to say, yeah, citywide will do that. And except for in the transit area, okay? Because this is my 8% overlay is going to be citywide, okay? In the transit area, they don't get a density bonus if they're only at 8%. I like the idea of a mandatory overlay at 8% in the transit areas with no density bonus, but I want to do an overlay of 20%, and I will give them a full 20% density bonus in the transit areas.
So that's all good except for the desire to not give them a density bonus if they're providing 8%. So basically what the council's asking for is, as Councilmember Melendez mentioned, to integrate the inclusionary requirements and the density bonus.
I got you.
So under our old inclusionary requirements, we didn't give you credit for density bonus.
Got you. Yeah, you just had to do it. Yeah.
So what you're saying is you're okay with inclusionary, but we also want to allow the density bonus to be used with
to offset your costs. Exactly.
That all works.
Except for the transit one.
But
So
the state says if you provide a certain level of affordable units, you have to get the density bonus.
Okay, well then I want to do 20% overlay in the transit areas. I don't even want to give an option of 8% then. I want to do so 20% overlay on all for rent and for sale developments within 3/4 of a mile of mass transit hubs. All units in these areas will be given a density bonus of up to 20% to offset the costs. Okay?
Yeah.
So that's in transit and then the 8% citywide.
I'm completely amicable to that. That's more than I am even suggesting. So thank you.
You are very welcome. So now it's, do we need to have it reseconded?
Seconder has to accept the amendment.
Well, yeah, I totally accept that. Thank you.
So then, are there any other speakers? Everybody's all done? Yeah.
So can I restate the motion so I'm clear on what we got?
Yeah.
You could read it later. Write it down right.
8% citywide inclusionary requirement for any project that's 20 units or more.
Yep.
Also allows density bonus citywide. In the TOD areas, which are defined as 3/4 of a mile from a transit center, a 20% inclusionary requirement, and again, can allow density bonus. That's what I have.
Can we define transit?
With it.
Because, yes, but I think previously you'd also mentioned like train stops and, I don't know if it's just the locations of our transit centers or if it would be, any mode of public transportation, like a bus stop.
So we've only defined it so far as 3/4 of a mile from a transit center, which would be a Sprinter station.
Okay.
And I would say from a density standpoint, citywide, I mean, that takes up like 25% of our actual like map per se. I mean,
You have the half mile
Ex-
radius map.
yeah, okay. Yeah, so it's okay. Thanks.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
So we got to vote.
Okay, so, yeah.
I just want to say that while I'm not going to support the motion, I do commit to meet with members of the community and interested parties to better understand how the math will work with your density bonus proposal, because I do understand that there is an offsetting benefit there. I didn't really say earlier, but I do want to say that I don't ultimately believe that developers or builders pay for anything. I think they pass, well, seriously, they pass it. Look, if I sell, soda in a cup and the cost of the cup goes up, you think I'm paying for that? No, I'm charging you for that. You're my customer. I'm going to bill it through. If I eat the cost of the increase in the cup, I don't make as much money. And that's a problem because now I can't pay my employees and I can't pay my bills. So look, ultimately this conversation about, am I up here defending the profitability of developers? No, because I don't think they need to be defended at all. They're going to pass their costs through. That's just going to happen. So, however, I will discuss this idea with all of the interested parties. And if the community is overwhelmingly supportive of it, then I may change my mind. But I think there's a lot of things to consider here. I just want you to know that I'm going to be open-minded about it. What we're doing right now is, correct me if I'm wrong, we're asking staff, we're giving direction as a council for staff to bring back a formal proposal. So because I don't start out agreeing with it, I don't think I'm going to vote for this, but I'm not committing to vote one way or the other, but I am committing to be open-minded and to continue the conversation.
And I agree with you. I'll second that.
I have one more question.
To be clear, I'm so sorry. My motion was for us to implement, right, for staff to implement a program. So my understanding based on my motion is that, we're not going to be having this come back, over and over again, for there to be, there's not like a lot of more time for an additional time to make a decision. This is the decision now. My motion was that City of Vista's staff is directed to create and implement an inclusionary housing policy as we collaborated about.
Do you have a written perfected copy of your policy?
And bring it back to the council for ratification.
Okay.
And we can't, is it the Brown Act, right? We can't pass anything through without a second reading.
For an ordinance.
On an ordinance, yes, 3-2 would need a second reading. 4-1 or greater, we don't.
Okay, thank you for explaining that.
Councilmember Green.
The only thing that wasn't really stipulated in this motion, and I want to make sure that when staff comes back with the policy having to do with the purchase inclusionary overlay, we can talk about it offsite, like in our offices with staff, I guess, like how are they going to do that? Is it a down payment assistant? Is it a tax credit that gives them a help with their monthly, income through the mortgage credit certificate program, through the Affordable Housing Administration? I mean, for the first sale overlay inclusion is going to be different than the rent overlay inclusion. Does that make sense?
Yes, but the policy that you're referring to would have to be brought back separately from the inclusionary discussion unless you want to provide direction today.
I can't provide direction today. I just want to make sure there's a seed planted so that we have the mechanism to implement that eventually. I think the rental one's going to be easier to implement quickly.
So we have a private development moving forward that's proposing that, and we'll discuss that before that project gets before you.
Okay. Oh, so we're all done?
So direction I have is to bring it back for ratification, and we will be back hopefully within a couple months, the latest.
Okay. I'll call for the vote then.
I would, just caution, I don't think we can actually, while the council's direction is clear, implement it because the council agenda only says to discuss.
Okay. So
it doesn't say adopt. So, we would have potential Brown Act issues. So I would say the staff has direction now, but we would bring back something, a polished policy, a complete policy for your consideration.
So no vote is
to
needed.
adopt it.
Okay. So no vote right now. Okay.
So no vote?
No vote would be necessary. I mean, you have a motion to, directing staff. You can vote on that, but it's not going.
It's not a policy, it's
not
just
going to be
directing
the
staff?
actual policy.
So you don't need to vote, right?
You don't actually need a
we don't
vote
need- so
because
we
I
don't need
think.
a vote.
We vote though because we did it. We're still directing.
Yeah, why
You
don't,
can
why don't we
vote,
vote just to put it on the record, I guess?
You can vote, there's no reason you cannot vote.
Does it matter?
So
Does it
you wanna
matter to you
vote?
guys?
Vote's fine with me.
Everyone vote.
Okay,
Okay, everybody in
okay.
favor? Oh, wait, everybody say, aye, or raise your hand.
I in favor.
Anyone
Aye.
opposed? Okay, that's a vote is 3-2. Okay, and with that, we have, we don't have any, we can't discuss anything because there's nothing on the agenda, so we're going to adjourn.
Thank you, everybody, for attending.